We learn more.
Meanwhile, streaming services you use every day are trying to consolidate, so that could change who owns production companies and how movies get to your screen. Many film groups and consumers are concerned about potential takeovers.
First Alert 6's Sydney Babb spoke with Film Streams to find out what this means for their theater and how they might be keeping audiences in their seats.
Within days of Netflix making a bid to buy out a large part of Warner Brothers, Paramount launched a hostile takeover for the entire company. Some theater owners are concerned as streaming services look to gain more power in the film industry, as it could take more movies directly to your home instead of the big screen.
And I think that Netflix taking over a major studio like Warner Brothers could threaten something like the theatrical system.
Film Streams is a local nonprofit theater. Its programming director says this year has been their best since the pandemic. One thing they continue to do is give you something you can't get at home: early access to films, even the ones on streaming.
Luckily, we've been able to screen these films, and you know, I don't know, going forward, if they intend on still doing this model, or you know how that looks if they acquire a lot of the different properties that Warner Brothers has.
They're also providing more variety in the movies that they screen.
One thing that we've seen that really drives people out to the theaters is seeing classics, seeing repertory cinema.
Each weekend they have weekend essentials, often taking advantage of the nostalgia that moviegoers want.
I'll never forget that as a young girl going to see The Sound of Music in the theater. Maybe a lot of younger people aren't going to have that experience of watching something together and seeing people's reactions communally in a room.
Mostly I like to go to the movies as a family. It's something that we can kind of experience together.
And Film Streams knows that connection is what will keep theaters full as streaming tries to keep audiences at home.
Just as any other threat to movie-going throughout history has presented itself, I think cinemas always persist, and they will always be, you know, that third space that we can come and enjoy together.
In Omaha, I'm Sydney Babb, First Alert 6.
No matter if Netflix or Paramount wins the bidding war for Warner Brothers, they might run into an issue if the Trump administration views a potential merger as a violation of anti-monopoly laws. We'll keep up with the latest on that deal and bring you updates as we have them.